everyone. Welcome this late afternoon. Actually, a very beautiful, crisp day. I'm very pleased to have our kickoff event today, and we have two more, and actually I have three more in November. But I'm really excited about this event itself because I feel that the Holocaust Genocide and Interfaith Education Center, which I'm director of, has always been about narrative, storytelling, but looking at each other's narratives, looking at a different perspective. And I feel that there has been so much around the nation on campuses that students are not allowed to talk about Israel, students are not allowed to talk about Palestine, and what better venue to have this discussion right at a college with all of you here. So one of the things that I work on is both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. I'm also the Muslim Students Advisor here on this campus, and I can tell you how my students feel being Muslim sometimes, which is not always comfortable. And I also work with young Jewish students all around the country who express the same thing. So there's a real problem and a real need to address these issues. So I'm really, really delighted that we're here. So I'm just going to tell you how we're going to proceed. We're going to have each speaker speak for 15 minutes, and then we will stop and maybe say a few more things, and then we will take questions. So let me introduce my honorable guest today. Rabbi Ron Kronish on my right here is a friend, and I met with him in Jerusalem in March when I was there. We had a nice lunch together. He just became a second-time grandfather of a beautiful boy, so Mazel Tov, Mubarak. Rabbi Ron Kronish is currently an independent lecturer, scholar, author, blogger, interreligious consultant, and activist. I get his blogs all the time, and he's highly prolific, by the way. He is also a library fellow at the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, where we met. Previously, he was the founding director of the Interreligious Coordinating Council in Israel, and through his 25 years of service to his organization, became one of the leaders in the field of interreligious dialogue as a form of peace building in Israel and internationally. He's a noted rabbi, author, and speaker. He has spoken in synagogues, churches, mosques, and universities in North America. His latest book is right here, The Other Peace Process, Interreligious Dialogue, A View from Jerusalem. And he's done many other publications that I'm not going to mention. You guys can Google that. And to my left, really honored to have Sheikh Ghassan Manasra. He comes very highly recommended to me, and I'm so happy to make his acquaintance today. He flew in from Saratoga just to be here with us, and goes back to Israel tomorrow. So, wow, you think you're tired, right? Sheikh Ghassan is an Arab Israeli who is a globally recognized and respected expert in interreligious dialogue and facilitation. He's international director of the Abrahamic Reunion, a Fulbright scholar, an Arabic and Hebrew scholar who offers international presentations on Middle Eastern topics and issues. He was a recipient of the 2014 Outstanding Leader in Interreligious Dialogue Award from Temple University. He's also has worked with individuals, communities, and governments in times of crisis and in times of peace. His methods have been honed during the last 30 years to the point where he now uses his own experience to train others. So please welcome both of our speakers here at Mehnaz College. So, Rabbi Kronish.
Okay, thank you. It's wonderful to be here, here at Manhattan College. Through my friendship with Mehnaz, I've been here over the years. I used the library here 2 years ago, where I sat and wrote this book that came out last year. And last year on my blog, I reviewed Mehnaz's book, Show Off Your Muslim Eyes. Gave it a very good review, which was the objective truth, of course, 100%. So I'm happy to be here and to share with you some words about an important topic about having to do with interreligious dialogue and reconciliation and peace building in Israel. It's probably a subject you don't read much about in the newspapers these days. We don't make the news much for two reasons. We don't kill anybody, and we don't engage in scandal, so that doesn't even get us in the back pages anymore. So this is an opportunity for you to hear something that you wouldn't see on television or read in the daily press. I want to begin by making a distinction which hopefully will help us in our discussion. Scholars who write about the work of peacemaking and peace building have developed a distinction which I like to use. Peacemaking generally refers to the politics of peace, what is called on the front page of your newspapers, the peace process. Okay? That has to do with people in government, diplomacy, politicians who attempt to make peace agreements between countries. And we won't review the history of this, but you know that we have a series of peace agreements between Israel and Egypt, and Israel and Jordan, and Israel and the Palestinian people. We recently marked 25 years since the Oslo Agreement, 1993. So there are a series of political accords which are put together by people who are trained in legal work, international relations, and the like. So I am not a politician, neither is my colleague Sheikh Ghassan, and we engage in what people call peace building. Peace building, if it works well, complements the work of the peacemakers. So when the Oslo Agreement happened 25 years ago, there was a lot of peace building efforts in the early years after Oslo, of Palestinian and Israeli Arab groups meeting with Jewish Israelis to get to know one another for the first time because a peace agreement had been accomplished. So there is a relationship. There's also an inverse relationship. When we have no peace agreements, as we have had none for the last several years, then it's harder for people on the ground in grassroots organizations to bring people together to talk about peaceful coexistence and living together. So we are here to talk to you tonight about our peace building work. Of course, if you ask anything in the question period that has to do with political things, we'll try our best to answer, but we are not political scientists or political people per se. Okay, I want to say a little bit about why, a little bit about with whom, and a little bit about how. Okay. So, why have we spent the last 25 years, Ghassan and I have engaged in many projects together, bringing people together from different religions and nationalities to come to know one another for the sake of living together? The answer is, the alternative is a lot worse. And despite the current political framework, we believe that it's important for people to figure out ways, even in the midst of conflict, and we're in the midst of an ongoing, unresolved, not likely to be resolved very soon conflict, and we bring people together to come to understand one another, to see if we can learn to live together now, and can we build a common future together. In so doing, one of our messages is to keep hope alive in a time of great despair. So someone said to me before the talk, this isn't a very popular activity these days. I said, perhaps it isn't, but there are more people that do this kind of thing in Israel and Palestine than you know about, because we don't make the news very much. So the first point is, we do this because we believe it's important to do now and for the future. Okay, with whom do we enter into dialogue? So the conflict in Israel and Palestine is between members of two nationalities and 3 religions. Okay? The 2 nationalities who are struggling to find a way to live together in our part of the world are the Jewish nation, the Jewish people, who through a movement known as Zionism created a state known as the State of Israel, and the Palestinian people, some of whom live in Israel and are citizens of the State of Israel, like Sheikh Ghassan, and are part of our 20% minority. Others live in the Palestinian Authority, and others can live in other parts of the world. But the Palestinian people sees itself as a people, and these 2 peoples, or collective national groups, have been trying for the past 25 years at least to figure out how to share the land and live together. So the dialogue is between Palestinian Arabs and Jewish Israelis. And the Palestinians who come to our dialogues are also generally religious. They are Muslim, mostly Muslim, okay? Because the majority of Palestinians in our area are Muslim. A small percent are Christian Palestinians. And the Muslims who come to our dialogue, as the Christians, as the Jews, come in their diversity. So we would have Sufi Muslims and Sunni Muslims and more Orthodox, if you will, and more secular, okay? And the same with the Jews and the same as the Christians. So we bring people together into dialogue, youth, young adults, religious leaders, usually at the grassroots level, educators, women from women's groups, people who have an ability to influence their communities when they're done with the dialogue, and they can go back home and work in their communities or their schools or their various educational and communal settings. So we bring people into dialogue with one another, often for the first time. Okay? So when Palestinian or Israeli Arabs meet Jews for the first time, it can be a little shocking, a little disturbing. And a lot of work needs to be done to overcome very deeply ingrained media stereotypes that each person or each community has about the other. So we have developed, over the last 25 years, a method of dialogue. We begin with the personal, getting to know one another and one another's identity. We move from there to studying each other's religious and cultural texts. When we do the personal and the text study, we build trust with one another. And when we have developed trust, we discuss together core issues of the conflict. We're not afraid to talk about anything and put it on the table, as long as we do it in a spirit of respect and an ambience of genuine listening, which I hope we will do this evening as well. And we believe that when we're finished with the dialogue process, we need to go back to our communities and take action together. So over many years of trial and error, we developed a method of dialogue, which we have done over the years with carefully trained facilitators. Sheikh Ghassan was one of our facilitators for several years in one of our projects. Okay. I want to say a few words about the theme I started with, about hope versus despair. And I'll share a little story with you. I am a rabbi, so I have to share a story, right? Okay. A few years ago, pardon?
But I'll have to cut you off.
Okay, I'm watching. I'm watching. A few years ago, I was invited by a friend of mine to give a talk at St. Bart's Cathedral in Manhattan, 51st and Park Avenue. It's a big Anglican church. And I was there at what they call the Rector's Forum. After the main service, about 50 people gathered in a room, and I was kind of interviewed by the rector of the church on some of the issues we're talking about now. And in the audience was a fellow named Senator George Mitchell. Okay, for those of you who may not know who Senator George Mitchell is. He was a very prominent senator from the state of Maine. And among other things, he's famous for having carved out what's called the Good Friday Agreement between the Protestants and the Catholics in Northern Ireland in 1998. So Senator George Mitchell was there, and we were talking about this issue of hope versus despair. And in the middle of the discussion, he raised his hand, and he asked the chairman if he could make a comment rather than ask a question. That's what we call a Jewish question. And the chairman said, okay, you can do that. And here's what he said, and I've never forgotten. He said, when I went on my last visit to Northern Ireland that year, 1998, to try to finalize the agreement between the Protestants and the Catholics who had been killing each other for decades in Ireland. I arrived on a Monday morning, said Mitchell, and there was a poll in the major newspaper which said 84% of Protestants and 84% of Catholics say that there will never be an agreement here in Northern Ireland. That such a thing is quite impossible. And 4 days later, he had an agreement. Okay, why do I tell you that story? If you came to Israel and Palestine now, that'll be roughly you got the same numbers on the poll. The overwhelming majority of people say there's no hope, there's no agreement, the politicians on both sides are bad, and nobody really wants to that court. And I do not subscribe to that idea. I subscribe to George Mitchell's idea, which is there's always hope. There's always a possibility, despite the despair of the current moment. And one of our jobs, those of us who are involved in creating a dialogue, is to keep that hope alive. I will say one last sentence, then I'll sit down, so there'll be plenty of time for questions. Many people over the years have often said something to me slightly, sometimes in jest, but I think it's Freudian humor. Something like, what good are you anyway? You haven't brought the peace. You've been laboring in the vineyards 25 years and there's still not peace. So I don't know if they're serious or kidding, but I think they're half and half. So I don't view my job, as I go back to the beginning, as a politician to have brought the peace agreement. Okay, I would like more peace agreements, the sooner the better. I view the goal of our work in dialogue and reconciliation work in Israel and Palestine is promoting good relations between the peoples and the religions and the cultures of the region, so that one day we can benefit from the fruits of learning to live together in peaceful coexistence. And our goal is to keep that vision alive and not to say that it will never happen. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. Really, you inspired me, as usual. I'm a son of Manasra. I came from Nazareth. I'm the man of Nazareth. I'm not Jesus. I'm one of his followers. Because as a Muslim, I need to follow all of the prophets.
Can you hear it?
Not very well.
Are you hearing me now?
Yeah.
Maybe stay still. Yeah.
Like this. Okay. Good. Yeah. Again, I came from Nazareth, and this is so beautiful city, so nice city, and I grew up there. Nazareth, it's in the Galilee area, so close to the Sea of Galilee. And when we were children, I remember that we wanted to play a very great game. It's called the Peace Game. I was about 8, 9 years old. We began the game, all of us together as a circle. We, catch the hand of the other. And we used to say one word, after that we run, and each one you will catch, you will say word of peace. Love you, I know you, you're great. This is one of the greatest games that I used to play when I was a child. And slow, when I began to grow up again slow, I studied from my grandfather, the father of my father, lots of great things about who I am, what I am, what I can do, what we did. And from there I began to realize that I need to do something in my future. And when I was about 15 years old, I used to say that we are the greatest nation in the world as Muslims. We are so great and we have lots of things to do. And one day my father catched me, Sheikh Ghassan Manasra, he's the head of the Qadri order in the Holy Land. He said to me, son, stop to say this. You are not the best. Because if you need to be the best, you need to do the best things. And to do the best things not only for you, you need to do the best things to all the people all around you. And look at Nazareth. We are not only Muslims there, we are Christians and Muslims. And if you look at the country, we have Jews, Christians, and Muslims. You need to be in connection with all of these people and to make great things to build yourself. And since that time, I began to realize that there is something we need to talk with or within the human being. Not only to talk to ourselves, And when the people ask me, who are you? I can say, I'm a human being. I cannot say I'm a Muslim. And they say, but you are Sheikh. I say, okay. It can be a Jewish Sheikh or a Christian Sheikh. The Sheikh, it's a degree for the clergy, for the religious person. And I used to say to the people that I'm a human being. I'm part of all of you. Because I'm a collective, I'm not an individual. But when I practice my process, I'm individual. I can connect my connection between me and between God. But to be in connection with God, I need all of you, because this is vertical way, need horizontal way. You are my bridge toward God. Later, I began to realize different things when I reading the Quran every day. In the Jewish tradition, there is a parasha for a week to read each week different chapter. I read the verse, all people, we created you from male and female, and we have made you nations and tribes to know one another. And from here appeared the meaning of the meeting and the differences between all of us. These differences created lots of knowledge for all of us. And we need to realize what kind of knowledge we need to do or to study. To meet, it's very great. To see, it's very great. But to meet one another or to know one another, to create a great knowledge, to connect one with another. And it will come through the differences. These differences created to clean all of that ignorance in our life, not for to create the walls between all of us. Then we need to talk one with another through the light between all of us. And I want to connect to what my teacher, Ron, yeah, we worked together, and he was my boss. Until today, he's my boss. And he's my teacher, really. I studied from him a lot. A lot. I must say this. When he say why, you say why? Why we did these things? It's only to, you know, part of my friends once, we had a conflict inside the group, if you remember, after the death of Sheikh Ghassan. We had a meeting in Nazareth with educators, and the participants didn't came to the meeting because the Israeli force killed Sheikh Ghassan. The Muslim group and the Christian group didn't come to the meeting. And my colleagues, the facilitator, said, "Oh, we lost our work." I look at them, you know, they joke with me, but it's a little bit, was so hard for me to hear this. We lost our job. Is this kind of job, or this is a path, kind of spiritual path for all of us? And I didn't say anything, but when we met again, I say to them, listen, you mentioned this is our job, we lost our job, we need more people to come. Then you say we need more conflict, to have more participants with us. I say, I hope to lose my job directly now. You say, why? I say, because then we will have peace. If we will have peace, we don't need the job. But listen to me. We were born, all of us, to fulfill all our responsibilities. And the first thing that we need to do, our responsibility, is to bring all these family, the Abrahamic family, to be together, to understand one another. If we will understand very well ourselves and the other, we can create a path of peace. Again, why? Because I need to protect myself. How to protect myself? I cannot protect myself by myself. I need you to protect me, and I'll protect you. This is mutual deed. This is mutual movement between all of us. I will share a story as a sheikh. Not only rabbis use stories, also sheikhs use those stories. When I was about 7 years old, during the Ramadan month, you know what is the Ramadan month? It's the fasting month for the Muslims. By joke, I say it was 3 days, something came next to the 3, it began to be 30 days. But it's 30 days. You know, during the nights, after that we broke the fast, we went away to be with my grandfather and my grandmother. Why? Because they gave us lots of candies after the fast, and after that, they began to tell us lots of great stories. And you will not believe me, but I'll tell you most of the stories about Bani Israel. You know what Bani Israel? Bani Israel. The Israelis, the sons of Israel. And it was so beautiful stories, and we used to sleep on the balcony during the summer. It's so nice to sleep outside in Galilee during the night. And the early morning, my grandfather came to let us know that this is the time of the prayer. The prayer at that time in the summer, it's about 4:50. And I remember he catch my hand and say, Ghassan, wake up. Meet yourself. All of them say, meet yourself. And I said, what do you mean meet yourself? When I was so young, I say, to meet myself is to go to pray. And they did. My grandfather passed away. And I began to search in you, Sheikh. until I heard about Sheikh Baghdadi, East Jerusalem, and I came to him. I prepared hundreds and hundreds of questions to ask him. He has lots of disciples, and when I met him, I succeeded to ask him one question. But he said to me, Hassan, go and know yourself. I was 15 years old. I said, oh, it's great to be disciple. I went, I tried to know myself. 1 week, I said, next week, next month, next year. And then he said, what happened to you? I said, I couldn't. But when I met first time with my father, Rabbi Ron, one of the greatest, and I called him your holy man. He's a Jewish rabbi, settler, but he is a very pure person. He's a peace builder. When we met him, I came to the Sheikh, I said to him, I began to understand myself. Because I need to look at the mirror, at the eyes of the other. If you need to know yourself, don't look at yourself. Look at the eyes of the other. You can realize yourself. You can see yourself. And then we began to know ourselves. I want to say, again, as Ron, good. 5.5? Okay. You know, I work with Ron in a very important project. It's the project of the Kedim, called Kedim, the project of the judges. I was a facilitator and he was the director. And we brought the judges, the Muslim judges, the Christian judges, the Jewish judges together to meet and to discuss. You know, it's different than to bring different people, because the facilitators or the peace builders, they know that each project needs a different kind of strategy, different kind of knowledge, different kind of dialogue or other things, you know. And this group was so special. We have the high chief rabbis and the imams and the priests. They are the judges, and we had a very deep discussions inside the group. When we began this group, you know, each one came as an individual, and we succeeded to create a group, because the people think that from the beginning this is a group. It's not a group, it's number of people. You need to create the internal dynamic to create this group. And this group, because they were very high level of people, they created with us the internal dynamic of the group, and then we had to discuss very, very serious points and very deep topics and themes for the meetings. And these people, when they came to be part of our group, they didn't came alone. They came, and behind them, their families and their neighborhoods. And for the first time, as Ron said, they invited sheikhs, Muslim imams and sheikhs, to go to teach inside the Jewish schools, religious Jewish schools, and at the same time, they invited the Jewish to the Muslims and to the Christian schools. And the students, for the first time, they met the other schools, and they asked them lots of questions. For example, they invited me to his memory, the rabbi, the French rabbi,
Rabbi Eli Khan.
Eli Khan. He invited me to the school of the religious girls there. For them was a first meeting with me. It was so great. In the end, when I left, I said, Rabbi, come again to study together. It was, for me, it was the time to open more doors. I prepared myself to talk a lot and to say many things that we did, but you know, the time, usually, the great moderator for all of us. But why? The question that people ask, why you didn't brought the peace? You didn't bring the peace, and there's no peace. I don't believe this thing. We brought peace. Because before that we began, we had numbers of people. After that we began to work, we had thousands of people and hundreds of organizations in Israel and Palestine also. I want to say that we succeeded, but don't put all of the pressure on our shoulders. We cannot do everything at the same time. 32 years in my work in this field, and Rabbi Kronish before me also. We cannot change all the country. Because again, I want to say something. When I talk to you, I can talk to something within you. For that people, you need to talk to different things. Each person built from many elements within him. You need to catch the point to connect. And we have lots of keys. We used about 50% of our keys. We have more 50%. We will try to use all the time. Hope we will succeed.
Thank you so much for your opening remarks. So I'd like you to sort of think of a question, and in the meantime, while you're thinking of a question, I would like to ask a question or kind of bring up a thought that I have in terms of both of your opening remarks, and that is, how do we get to know each other when we don't live in the same space?
Thank you. It's very, very deep question. Listen, all of the process will begin from the same step. This step can begin from your house with a very, very open education. I think I want to say a small story. It's about 2 hours, but it's I was in Jerusalem. I used to live in Jerusalem, and Rabbi Dov Maimon, he has a bar mitzvah circumcision for his child, and he invited me. He said, "Ghassan, come on." Usually, I used to take in each meeting or each event a different child. This time, it was the time of my daughter, Zizi. She's over there. She was about 7 years old. I took her with me, and we entered to that ultra-Orthodox evening. She was next to me. And Dov came to me and said, "Ghassan, she cannot stay with you. She's 7 years old." He said, "Ghassan," the rabbi said to me, "you need to send her to that woman session, Ezrat Nashim." I said, "Okay, I will." I say, "Zizi, you must go there." She said, "I don't know to speak Hebrew. I'm speaking only Arabic, and I don't know anyone." I say, "Please come on." And Dov say, "My mother, she's from Tunis. She can speak with her Arabic." I said, "No, better to speak Hebrew. It's a different accent, different dialect, you know." And I sent her there, and we finished. In the end, in the way, in the car, I asked Zainab, Zizi, my daughter, I say, "Zizi, how was she?" She was brilliant, great. I said, "What is brilliant and great?" She said, "Listen, Father, I spoke with the daughter of Dov." I said, "How old is she?" She said, "The same age as mine." I said, "Okay. In which language did you speak with her?" She said, "In Arabic." And she spoke with you in Arabic. She said, "No, in Hebrew." "Do you understand her?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Okay. What kind of discussion you have?" And she said, 1, 2, 3, 4. I said, "Okay." I called Dov. I said, "Dov, can you ask your daughter how it was for her?" She said, "The same thing as my daughter said." From that time, I realized that peace and discussion doesn't need language, needs hearts, needs education. I took my daughter to the Jewish event. It's very, very Jewish event, and also Muslim event, but we have circumcision also, but to take your children to the other place. If they live in that place, don't wait until that places or spaces will disappear. Go to that place.
Yeah, I'll say something quick. I think one of the strategies we applied is not to go national, but to stay local as much as possible. So we did a lot of work in Jerusalem or in the Galilee, where people could get to know one another and then continue it easily without having to, drive X amount of hours. So working in Jerusalem, there's geographical barriers of east and west, and people live in very separate communities. But if you're in the same general geographical area, it makes it easier to do. But there are still very significant barriers that have to be overcome. Most Jews and Arabs don't go to the same schools, so if you want to work with youth, you have to bring them in extracurricular activities, and the same for adults. But I think working locally is one way to make it a bit easier than only working on the national level.
Okay. Questions from the audience? Yeah.
I'm sorry, the student. Go ahead, no, say your name.
My name is Bruna. I'm from Brazil and I'm studying communication here. And my question, first of all, thank you for sharing and for your work. And my question is, what kind of career or background people should have to work in the ground as you do?
Yeah, let's take another question, and then we'll take a 2 or 3, and then we'll get a response. Would you like to ask her for that?
I think they're coming with a microphone. Maybe like.
Arlen, you want to take this? No, it's okay.
Dr. Kronish, you spoke of the Palestinian people. As I trust you know, and perhaps some of the others in this room, in 1947, the General Assembly of the United Nations came up with a plan, usually referred to as the Partition Plan, to create 2 states. In this document, the term Arab is used 52 times. Now, Arab is both a noun and an adjective. So the term Jew or Jewish is used equally 52 times. Arab and Jew or Jewish are paired 52 times. The term Palestinian is used only 5 times. 4 of the 5 times, it's to refer to people who were citizens of the mandate, the prior sovereignty in the area, who were neither Jewish nor Arab, basically Europeans living in the area.
Excuse me, sir, can we have a question?
Okay. Well, I've explained that the term Palestinian is never used in this major document that was supposed to settle this whole issue. How do you explain that Palestinian is never used to refer to the, quote, Palestinian people that you claim exist? Why are they referred to as Arabs in this major historical document and not, as you would say, Palestinians?
Thank you.
May I make a comment and ask a question if it's quick?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you just don't want to lecture, that's all.
It just seems that in building peace, people who have a mutual interest, common interest, can be very useful in terms of dialogue. And quick, the United Nations has within it a group called the United Nations Global Compact, and within that, there is an organization called Business for Peace. And so I'm wondering whether or not the business communities in Israel and in Palestine represent at least a potential for this kind of mutual interest being applied in peace building.
What career you need to be part of this work, right? It's a great question, but it's sometimes I cannot answer this question. You know, as I say, sometimes you have questions with answers, sometimes you have answers with questions, sometimes you have answers without questions, and questions without answers. But it's I will not make it a philosophical term, but I want to tell you something. The career is to believe in yourself and what you need to do. It's very, very easy. I think many people, they began to create a philosophical, theological dimensions to come to work with and say, no. I need you very, very honest and very pure. Come as a child. You know, Jesus spoke about us to be like children and child. And the Prophet Muhammad and Moses and all of these prophets come as a child and grow with all you work with many people. It's, as I say, sometimes close your eyes from the barriers of the religious dimensions, not the religion. We don't have any problem with the religion. We have problems with the religious. The religion is a very great. Then come as pure. You don't need any career. It's very important to read many things about the other, all Islam, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, and other, but don't prepare yourselves as we will go to the PhD. And very important thing, to be, I did it, but you know, and when I work at this, really, I still a child.
I'll say a few words about your question and then I'll relate to the second one. Today, you can get a master's and PhD degrees in conflict resolution, peace studies, and all this kind of thing. Most people I know who get these degrees learn a lot of theory and very little practice. And then they get an internship and then somebody helps them learn something about the real world. So one way to do it is to get a degree in that kind of thing today. It depends. There are now, you can study things like nonprofit management, which you couldn't study when I was younger. It depends where you want to go. One very important skill related to what you're studying, communications, is group facilitation. If you're going to engage people in dialogue, you have to be trained in facilitating dialogue, which is different than monologue. Dialogue means getting people to listen deeply to one another. So a lot of people who, in Israel and Palestine, who work in the dialogue work, get training in group facilitation skills. They go to particular places where you can get courses and you come out as a group facilitator if you're going to be in that area. So it depends on what level you're going to operate. But I would say in the field that I worked in addition to all that, it would help to know something about other people's religions. If you're going to do interreligious dialogue and you don't know anything about the other person's religion, you'll have a deficit and you have to pick up some of that. It would be useful to learn something about anthropology and cultural cues, in working with Palestinian Muslims and Christians. I've learned a lot about their culture and how to behave and not how to behave over the years, so cultural cues would be good to learn as well. So those are some of the things.
Doesn't it have to be trialogue rather than dialogue?
Okay, we'll come back to that question. That was it's not out of order. We'll get to trialogue and not dialogue. I once looked it up. There is no official word called trialogue. I looked it up on Google or Word. It was trilateral dialogue. I use trialogue all the time, but I mean, the word doesn't really quite exist. Okay. The question about the Palestinian people or not. Okay. We're not going to have a debate about this. You asked the question, so I'm going to share my point of view. For many decades, the world, and certainly the Israeli leadership, denied the existence of the Palestinian people. no, they don't really exist. They're individuals, they're not a people. In 1993, with the creation of the Oslo Accords, that changed. So the Oslo Accords, whether you like them or don't like them, you think we're right or wrong, the State of Israel and the Jewish people recognized the existence of the Palestinian people and their rights to something or other, what is now called the two-state solution. And the Palestinian people, led at that time by Yasser Arafat and the PLO, and recognized the rights of the Jewish state to a Jewish state, the State of Israel, and now all was to be worked out in details over the next 5 years. As you know, 25 years went by, and all the details didn't get worked out. But the major sea change in 1993 was the very fact of the diplomatic community, the international community, the State of Israel, the Jewish people, recognizing the existence of the Palestinian people. So, that's what I have to say about that. We could have a long... Okay, no, we're not having a debate about it, I'm sorry. No, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that now. We're not doing that now, I'm sorry. No, I answered the best I can, sorry. Okay, about building peace and common interests, your questions are about business. It's a great idea. I'll tell you an interesting story. I don't know if you heard about this. Since the Oslo Accords...
I'm sorry, if you can't keep quiet while people are talking, you can exit. This is not a good example for our students here at Manhattan College. Thank you.
After the creation of the Oslo Accords, with all the problems, one of the interesting things that's happened in recent years is the growth of the economy on the West Bank. I don't know if you know this, there are reports that I get about this, and with the help of some foreign governments and some business people from England, I happen to know there was a Jewish foundation from London, a friend of mine was on the staff, and she came several years ago to a meeting of the business community in Bethlehem to help establish businesses in the Palestinian community and grow the economy of the Palestinian community. And it's a steady, slow graph upward all the time, as opposed to what you probably read about in Gaza, which is the reverse. So there is some of that. I think we could use a lot more. You may remember that our former president, passed away, Shimon Peres, used to talk a lot about his vision of the new Middle East, but he particularly was interested in economic development and talked about a confederation that should be formed between Jordan, Palestine, and Israel for the purposes of economic development, because Palestine as itself, because of natural resources, can't function economically by itself. So there is a certain need, and not enough, I think, has been done in that direction, but there are some.
I think I agree with Ron about that business people, and I want to use something. In our work today, many of the business people, they help us to create more and more projects here in USA, in Europe, and in Israel. I think they can be a very, very useful element in our work. I think we need the business people, we need the politicians, we need the religious leadership to be part of our work, but very important to have the business people, because they can fill the gasoline, the gas in our work, and to support us to create more and more things.
Right. I am very young, very fond.
1 second, she's bringing the mic.
Thank you. I'm very fond of what you just said. You really explained how Israeli people live with Arabs. My big question is, where is Palestine? Palestine is Israel. During the Bible, it was first that God promised us Canaan, and Canaan is Israel. And then there was Palestine, which is Palestine, which is Israel. 1948, it became Israel because of the partition. I'm very, very happy that you explained to them how we live in Israel, because there is no separation. There is no Palestinian, Israelis. We live together. We go to even the Technion, and the Technion, you are going to see little girls cover their face, but they are doing everything like other Israeli kids are doing. There is no separation. We go to dance with them. We go to the theater. We go with them. We go to the university. Everywhere we go with them. My daughter went to Israel because in her college they were talking about Apartheid? Where is apartheid? There is no such thing. You agree with me? So she's sitting on the train with some Chayelet Israeli soldier, sitting next to an Arab girl with her hands and she's covered. And this Arab girl speaks Hebrew בעברית כמו שאני מדברת. אף אחד לא רואה שהיא ערבייה, אלא לא מבטא. She doesn't have even an accent.
Can I get a question, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
My question is, we don't have a problem in Israel. We have a problem how people presented Israel, especially. Why in this college you have all these flyers anti-Israel, spreading hate? It's not right. This is not what we came to do here. Would you agree with me? Thanks.
I like to do that.
Yeah, I just want to, I want to speak to the last comment on that one. For the sake of others that are here, our college does not espouse hate towards any group. I don't know what flyers you're talking about. I'm walking in the hallways every day. Muslims, Jews, and Christians, and others, Hindus, Buddhists, everyone is welcome in this college. If there is a flyer of hate, the faculty, the administration, and students would definitely speak out or do something about that. So I really want to say that as a strong advocate of peace and the director of the Holocaust, Genocide, and Interfaith Education Center as a Muslim at a Catholic college, that how can you even imagine Manhattan College having hate posters, especially against Israel or Jews or any kind of religious group. So I'd like to put that in everyone's mind and their record. Thank you.
Hello. I would like to say something, listen, about what you mentioned now. I'm Arab, right? I'm living in Israel. And we hear and we see inside the news lots of bad things happen in Israel. But if you come there and you'll travel there, you will not see all of these things. Sometimes they come to show the flash. And they say, some people say, where's your enemy in this world? I say, there's no enemy, because I see all the people as friends, as brothers and sisters. But sometimes we have the journalists or the media, they are our enemy because they jump all the time to show only the conflict. In Israel, my house in Nazareth, it's Arab city. All the time, if you will come, in the weekend, you can see many, 3 or 4 Jewish families staying with us. And sometimes my wife and I, we go to stay with them. When you see some aggressive activities, it's not belong to that, I say the politician, it's belong to that person from both sides. We don't need to blame or to judge all the nations, the Palestinians or the Israelis for these things. We need to look at that people, that they do these things. And to create, if you will find a very strong hurricane, right? You need to to go outside and to protect yourself. And when we see these things, we need to spread more and more right education. Thank you. Yeah, education.
So I want to say one comment about the last few questions, and I want to try to be as clear as I can as possible. In Israel and Palestine today, there are two peoples who are in a conflict that is not yet resolved. Okay? It is against the interests of both peoples to have this conflict be unresolved for another 25 years. It's in the interest of both peoples, for their mental health, for their physical health, for everybody's personal security and everything, for the conflict to be resolved. Okay? so that Palestinian Arabs and Israeli Jews can live in two states side by side with each other, and within Israel, so that the Jewish majority can live side by side with the Arab minority without discrimination and without occupation. It's in our interest to do that. I say as a person, not as a politician. I'm not a politician. Okay. And so at the end of the day, Israelis and Israeli Arabs and Palestinian Jews will have to compromise. Will have to compromise on all or nothing in order to have peace and peaceful relations with each other. Okay. The idea that each side can simply present every day to the media its non-negotiable demands and go home and feel better doesn't get either side anywhere in the end of the day. So I'm not suggesting to you a political path how exactly this is going to happen, because we will need different politicians than the ones we have on both sides of this to happen. But at the end of the day, the land of what the Palestinians call Palestine and the land of Israel, what the Jews call Israel, will need to be shared by both peoples in some very comprehensive, thoughtful, and creative ways in order for this conflict to finally end one day, which is in everybody's interest to happen, the sooner the better.
Okay, I'm just going to close because I know that you're very tired. You've been traveling and overseas, but I just want to thank everyone for coming. I just want to make a couple of points. One is, the Sheikh said, you are not the best, meaning you yourself. I think that's a really, really important message. The second thing, to know one another, is to know oneself. And the third thing is to actually go somewhere where you're not always welcome. And to make that stride, even though it's not your territory. And that doesn't apply just to Palestine and Israel, right? It applies to all of us, especially today in the United States, where we have to really understand that we are not the best. We are falling into bubbles. We are falling into closets and into cubicles. And this is the time where we really need to do what they're suggesting. Whether it's in Israel and Palestine, whether how we look at these narratives, but it's also amongst us here in the United States. Thank you so much.